Ladies and gentlemen, this show has taken me on a journey, and I hope it took you on a journey too, a journey of self-discovery, self-awareness, of enhanced knowledge, of through meeting so many wonderful experts from across the world, from different domains. I think we'll be touching or crossing 50, the number 50, number of experts we've spoken to in a very short while. And that while that's a landmark, I believe it has helped me evolve in the process and learn and listen and understand different points of view from across the world, from different domains. I'm really excited today because the person that we have today, the special guest that we have today on the show, was the first Indian-born martial artist to be featured on the cover of the Black Belt magazine. He was inducted into the Martial Arts Hall of Fame in 2019, and I'm talking about Sifu Harinder Singh, a remarkable human being, and I had the pleasure of meeting him at Jack Canfield's Breakthrough to Success program in 2016 in Scottsdale, Arizona. I could not go through all of his sessions because they were all early morning sessions and I couldn't make it to all of them, but I did see him in action on stage. He's full of energy and some remarkable transformational wisdom there. Sifu Harinder Singh Sabharwal is a martial arts and Tai Chi master, defensive tactics instructor, a thought leader, speaker, author, high-performance coach, philosopher. Sifu in Chinese is Chinese for sensei or teacher. And Sifu Singh teaches elite audiences and organizations, not just in North America, but across the world, how to thrive in chaos by living in the flow state. And I think that will be the subject of our discussion today. He has trained more than 150 elite military and law enforcement agencies, Silicon Valley business leaders, and professional athletes across the world. He's the founder of Mind Boxing. And we'll get more familiar with that term as well. Mind Boxing, an ancient focus and flow method that develops mental fitness, physical wellness, and peak performance in today's wildly uncertain times. Please join me in giving a warm virtual applause to Sifu Harinder Singh Sabharwal.
How are you, my friend? It's good to see you. It's been a long time.
Likewise, I know, a really long time. Paji Sat Sri Akal and Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
Good to see you, man.
Good to see you too. Good to see you too. And ever since I first saw you on stage at Jack Canfield's Breakthrough event, I think I've been in awe of your work and what you've accomplished and the message that you have for the world. I think I'd like to jump right into it, if I may, by asking you about your love for martial arts. How did that happen? And tell us the backstory of your transition to Sifu Harinder Singh Sabharwal today. Where did it all begin? What drew you to it? And what's brought you where you are today?
Absolutely. So I was born in Pune, in India. And for the people who don't know where that is, that's outside of Mumbai. Or Bombay, as it used to be called when I was younger.
Gee, right.
But my dad traveled a lot, and he was a sea captain, so we lived on a merchant ship for many years, and then we immigrated to Toronto, Canada. And I had two younger brothers, and being immigrants in Canada, and my mom raising us alone when my dad was out working, he wanted us to be able to protect ourselves. So I was enrolled into karate, Japanese style martial arts, when I was about 6 or 7 years old.
Oh, wow.
And I started very early, but the purpose was, my dad wanted me to be able to defend myself. And my mom wanted me to be able to have discipline and confidence and things of that nature. So she looked for, typical Indian style, looked for a university professor to teach me, philosophy. And then that started my journey. Went on from there till 19 years old. And then when I was 19, I got a tennis scholarship to play at the University of California in Davis, where I pursued a career as a computer and electrical engineer in the Silicon Valley.
Right.
So once upon a time, I was a computer and electrical engineer in the Silicon Valley.
Interesting. We have a lot of engineers and people from technical background, on our LinkedIn audience, on our YouTube audience. Say hi, please, if you're from a engineering background in the comments section. Okay, great. So, right. So, and did you end up getting a job in Silicon Valley after your graduation?
Yeah. I worked for a company called Xilinx, which is a semiconductor and FPGA company, and I worked there for about 8 years. And in engineering, design, customer applications, and then in business operations.
Wow.
But before I graduated university, I was in the wrong place in the wrong time, literally a scene out of a movie. We had gone to a bonfire to celebrate, and everybody was at the beach, which is about 100 meters, 200 meters away, and we were up in a parking lot, and we were the last cars to arrive. There was myself and a of my friends, and we were at the wrong place, wrong time. Literally a local gang came out of the darkness, high on drugs and all sorts of things, and they were looking for someone. And long story short, my roommate looked like the guy they were looking for.
Oh.
So they grabbed him and started beating on him and attacking me. And that's when my whole life shifted. So Simerjeet, that day, I'll tell you, being an athlete and being in martial arts my whole life, I never experienced anything like that day. Because what happened that day, I split the veil between time and space, because what happened was, in that, I discovered the beauty of chaos. So when they grabbed him and took him to the center, there's a moment where you're like, oh, this is my roommate, my best friend. What do I do? But your mind is like, run. Your mind says, run.
Yeah.
You have to make a choice between fight and flight. So when I decided to stay, in that quick moment, another guy swung a 2x4. A 2x4 is a wooden fence post somebody pulls off with nails sticking out. He swung it at me. I blocked it. And in that moment, I'm running and they're chasing me. And it looks more like a rugby match than like what you'd think of a martial arts movie. I didn't do anything heroic, but in that moment, what happened was my perception of time totally changed. Because that chaos allowed me to get rid of my idea of myself, my masks, my ego, my pride. Everything was gone because of life and death.
Right.
And I went into the flow state like I've never done before, and time slowed. Time completely slowed down. It was like I was moving in the Matrix. I could see everything slow motion. And I never felt that sense of peace ever in my life, doing anything.
In the middle of all this life-threatening, chaotic situation.
The eye of the storm, like a tornado. There's the eye of the storm. In the center, it's completely still. I had never experienced that level of peace or stillness in my life. Now, I didn't know what to do.
Right.
I didn't know what to do. And I didn't do anything heroic. I got my butt kicked all over the place. And then the divine intervened and said it's not his day to go down. So the guys that they were looking for happened to walk by. And when they happened to walk by, they switched their attention to them. I grabbed my roommate, my best friend, took him to the beach. I still needed to play a little bit of a hero, so I came running back to see, can I get the license plate? Because now police had been called and stuff. They're getting in their cars to escape. And as I'm looking at the license plate, the driver steps out, opens the door, lifts up his sweater, and reaches in his pants to pull out a gun. And I turn and I just run. I ran faster than the wind that day. I heard 2 shots. And that day, Simerjeet changed my life forever, because 2 things happened. One, I experienced this beauty of chaos, this stillness, this peace, that I had freed myself of myself completely, with my acquired self, who I thought I was, my expectations, my securities, controls, approvals, all these things were gone in that moment. But at the same time, I felt a great sense of shame and fear and anger. And that fueled me going forward. So when I graduated, I got a great job in the Silicon Valley, so I could afford to go train privately with the best masters in the world. And I dedicated my life to it. But see, what was driving me was anger. And it was shame and it was fear, because I couldn't protect my friend. And and that anger drove me to, find masters that train Navy SEALs, Secret Service agents, and at the same time go down the path of internal martial arts and Chinese medicine and things of that nature. Because, everybody's going to laugh, but this is a true story because I can't make it up. If you've heard of the death touch, I was after the death touch.
Okay.
So imagine somebody wanting to find out how to touch somebody to kill them because they're so angry, but who's going to teach them? So I said, I'm an engineer. I'll reverse engineer it. So I got a great idea.
I'll
go to Chinese medical school, and I'll figure out the healing and then reverse engineer it for my own various purposes.
So you put your engineering to good use there, reverse engineering it, the death move, right?
and my master knew, and but it took me, like, I went for the death touch, but I went on a journey of the healing hand. And I discovered that at that point, the only things that drove me were power, money, fame, importance, status, significance. And these weren't the most important things in life. And as I started to heal, as I started to do the internal martial arts, the Chinese medicine, the Tai Chi training, I started to heal. And I realized that the people who attacked me on the beach were really angels correcting my course for me to figure out that there's more in this world than just the stock options and the sports cars and the houses.
Right, all the goodies that you get with
which is what society makes us think, is an importance that you've made it.
Sure.
And that changed my whole trajectory. And now I'm here talking to you. Honored to be speaking with you.
Well, likewise. No, what a wonderful story there. And I feel that what could have been a moment that many people could have just overlooked or, ignored or processed it differently, you chose to process it in a way that turned your life around in an entirely different direction, right? And also that situation put you in a place where you could discover something inside you that you probably weren't aware of existed before, right? The ability to be calm and peaceful and focused and centered in the middle of what was potentially a life-threatening situation. And metaphorically, as far as, people who might be tuning into this conversation today, I think in our own lives as well, we get maybe not life-threatening situations, but career-threatening situations or ego-threatening situations or reputation-threatening situations where the stakes are very high. And the perhaps instinct will tell us to A, lose our temper, B, get defensive, C, something else, and we end up regretting it later on. And what I learned so far with what you just said is to find that spot that enables you to at least discover your balance in that moment, so you can figure out what your next best move could be, right? So as to retain that peace. And that's what I'm most interested in. I see a very calm, centered focus today. Even when you were at stage, doing all these maneuvers and with the different weapons on stage as well, you're very calm, very focused. It's not like sometimes when people go on stage, there's either a heightened state of excitement and then they're different off stage. I interacted with you when Jack does that come as you are party as well, where people dress up and they do different role plays and all that. And you were at the same level of stability at the party, on stage, off stage, in other situations. Tell us, people from non-martial arts backgrounds, how can we have more of that being centered in the moment, pick your best response sort of place?
So I think the most important word is, there's from the Tao Te Ching, it says, stillness is the master of unrest.
Okay.
And so we have to really become masters of stillness, because stillness is our superpower. Right. All right. The ability to be still. And then there's a way that you can really train it and understand it. So, for example, I'm sure many of the listeners here listening to your podcast and the many things that you say, it's about being present and being in the moment. That's what we all want. We're human beings. We're not human doings, and we're not human thinking. So the most important thing is the ability to be. And that ability to be comes down from training stillness. So, for example, the first level of stillness, if we take a look at it, there's the stillness of the body. Can you align the body? And that means release tension. The next is the stillness of the mind. Can it be in the present moment? Because it's the still point between the future and the past. That's the stillness of the mind. And the next piece is the stillness of the breath. That's the moment between the inhale and the exhale and the inhale. So as you start to practice these things and start to understand it, the first level of practice is stillness in stillness. That means maybe a seated meditation where you're not moving, a standing meditation where you start to learn how to do that. But that's just the first stage. I'm not saying it's harder or not. There's 3 stages and they're all equally important. Then the next stage is stillness and movement. Because in the morning when I wake up and I have my morning routine, I'm in my dojo, my temple, and I train over there, and it's cool, it's quiet, it's a perfect situation. But how long can I maintain that stillness when my eyes are open and I'm moving in outside with external stress forces being placed on me? That means people, places, and things. And that finally, the next level of training is stillness in movement under chaos.
Okay.
When something is trying to disrupt your stillness.
There's an actual threat or actual situation, right?
So when you train it that way, it transfers into everything you do because you operate from stillness. And that's your operating system has to be from stillness, from relaxation, so that you are aware. So we say we need to weaponize our awareness. That's the most important thing. My greatest weapon I have is my awareness. But that starts with, like you mentioned earlier, self-awareness. What's happening? How am I feeling today? Am I feeling strong? Am I feeling tired? Am I anxious? Am I upset? Am I fearful? So it starts with my own awareness. Then once I have my awareness, I want to have awareness of the person I'm speaking to, or I'm interacting with, or reading my opponent if I'm in a fight situation. That awareness goes further than just looking at them. You have to be empathetic and go inside them, looking at you to figure out what's important to them.
Wow.
And that is the key, because most of the time people communicate reaction to reaction and communicate
stimulus to stimulus.
Stimulus to stimulus, or story to story, because most people's reactions are based in their patterns of stories and experiences that they have, and they cannot then choose responses outside of those adopted and acquired patterns, which are based on stories or their woundings or their abandonments and rejections and hurts, and those things come in the way, and then they cannot see clearly, because then their fears come in the way, then their need for control comes in the way, need for approval comes in the way. So most of the time, people are just reacting. Right. But if we have awareness of the other person, feel the way they breathe, connect to them, see their posture, and find out what's important to them, now we communicate to the intention behind the communication, not just the words. And then finally, the next thing from there is then you have to have awareness of the situation. That's a situational awareness of where are we? What's the situation going on? Right. Then from there, you have tactical awareness, which is now you choose a tactical response based on awareness of yourself, awareness of others, and awareness of the situation. But to do that, we have to be still and in the moment, and we have to be able to connect to what's happening around us. Right. Or otherwise, we're up in our minds thinking and analyzing and worrying or stressing or being overwhelmed or whatever it may be. That's not the operating state we want to operate from.
I'd like the three stages that you mentioned: stillness and stillness, stillness and movement, and then stillness in movement in chaotic situations. It's number three. I think we can all start with number one. We have very little of it. We in our daily lives intentionally. We got notifications on our wrists and wearables and phones and everywhere. So even despite our best efforts, we feel, and somehow I feel where the popular culture is to blame as well, in the sense that a high achiever is, look at the high achievers that we fantasize or we like to, that we look up to. We don't see a lot of stillness. We see a lot of activity, frantic, frenzied activity. And we've started sort of looking up to that, forgetting that great decision making, as you mentioned, happens in stillness. So we can all start with level one, which is stillness and stillness. Would you like to share maybe some techniques or something, or what is your favorite in terms of just for level one to begin with, Sifu Harinder?
Absolutely, and let me share something for people too here, because so for me, if you notice, it was backwards because I had stillness in movement in chaos in that street fight. But it was flow or die. It was flow or die situation. So that situation overrid my patterns, my need to control situations, my thinking, and all those things. So that situation overrode it completely. Whereas sometimes it's very hard. So for the people listening, all three stages are important. But for some of you, stillness and stillness may be way more difficult than stillness, movement, and chaos. There's the high achievers.
Okay, so it's not sequential, right?
Yeah. So in chaos, they can click in, but then guess what happens for them to feel that? I know some listening know what I'm talking about. You create chaos in your life so you can fight that that stillness. So they just can't sit still, right? And that's what you see a lot in the Silicon Valley, for example.
You create the storm so you can be in the middle of the storm and watch the storm and, perhaps see other people getting involved in your storm. Right.
That's where you're comfortable.
Right, right.
And that doesn't work so well if you've got young kids or you want to connect to your beautiful wife or just walking down the street with. But to your question earlier, how do we start in stillness? There's a simple thing that if you do for 5 days, you're going to find a very different outcome.
Okay.
So it's called a 5 by 5 by 5. All right. So 5 minutes, 5 times a day for 5 days. What I want you to do, try it. And then you can call my BS after. Okay. But if you try it and see what happens. So what happens is that you do set 5 alarms throughout the day. Okay. First in the morning, before lunch, in the afternoon, in the evening, and before you go to sleep. And for those 5 minutes, so that's 5 minutes, 5 times a day, pull yourself away, close your eyes, and just focus on tracking the inhale, the still point, then exhale. Track the inhale, pause, feel the still point, exhale, pause, feel the still point. And just do that for 5 minutes. Now, I'm going to tell you something. Thoughts are going to come running into your mind. And this is what mind boxing, this is the first level of mind boxing. The reason I call it mind boxing is because the connotation of meditation is a little difficult sometimes, or what the idea of it is a little skewed. People think they're going to sit down and meditate and all of a sudden be like la and be in this amazing place, right? And they're like, think of nothing. The act of thinking of nothing is thinking of something, and everybody fails, right? You have to understand, and meditation is not a peaceful endeavor. You have to first go to war before you find your peace.
Right, with yourself, right.
With your thoughts. So the thoughts will come in and be like, oh, I forgot to do this. I forgot to do that. Did I do this already? Then some memory will come up from when you were a child, right? Or some amazing idea will come up for the future. You fall into any of those traps. And what it is that imagine those thoughts as punches. And every time they come in, you just acknowledge it and say, go back. The moment you acknowledge yourself thinking,
right,
that moment you are free till the next thought comes. Wow. So it's not the absence of thought, it's the awareness of when you are in thought. It's noticing yourself thinking.
That's a reasonable benchmark, right? That's a reasonable benchmark.
And if you do it that way, you'll be much more successful. And then you just focus back to the breathing. So what you're teaching yourself to do is to find the still point in your breath, and you're teaching yourself to catch yourself thinking. And when you do those two things, you become aware of when you're thinking, and you become aware of the still point. And as you practice this, you're going to notice a deep change in your level of presence, in your level of relaxation, and in your level of connecting to people. The other thing you're doing 5 times a day instead of just once in the morning, you're introducing still points throughout the day of your day. So now you're saying recalibrate throughout the day. So the word I like to use is recalibrate to the stillness. So try that, and it's a very simple thing that you could do. I mean, if you don't have 5 minutes for your own peace, then you have to ask yourself another question.
Sure. Definitely. No, I think we always request all of our hosts for practical tools that we can implement. So guys, if it's challenge accepted, type that in the comment section, please. Challenge accepted. 5 days, 5 minutes, 5 days, 5 times a day, 5 minutes for every stillness break. Love it. I love the thought of it, and I will definitely try and implement it and see what happens. I do it intermittently. It's not regular, but I do feel if you've sort of got a reminder system on some device, it'll help you go into that state more often. You mentioned about Chinese medicine, and now we're talking about stillness and how to go into that more centered state. Are there certain foods or certain lifestyles that sort of either create a better, more conducive environment for stillness and inner peace and inner balance? Or are there lifestyles and foods and nutritional habits that make us more easily irritable, or to get into that, to lose our balance, if you will?
That's a great question. So I think the very first thing that we need to talk about is water. Is that people living dehydrated. Right. So, you sleep in there's a good sip, right? Most people are operating in a state of dehydration.
Right.
So if you're water when you're thirsty, means you're dehydrated. You should never be thirsty.
Right.
So drinking your water also, for me, I can give you a practical way to drink water to ensure that you're not thirsty. Now, what happens first, before I give you that, is if you're not drinking the right amount of water, so how many people that at about 2:00 in the afternoon, right after lunch, you go to a snack, or you go for some sugar, or you go for some kind of food. And the thing is that, or a coffee.
Coffee, yes.
Yeah. The reason is because you're dehydrated.
Right.
The body doesn't know, right? So the way we're programmed, living in the wild, when we're not too far removed from that, but we would consume water from fruits we used to eat, not just drink water. So constantly, our whole thing was to hunt and to look for water, and to make sure for our performance and for our survival. So when you wake up in the morning, the very first thing to do is to have about 30 ounces of water. So I would say about, at least in liters, I don't know, about 1 liter to 1.5 liters of water, because you've slept all night dehydrated. In the beginning, when you start this, you're going to go to the bathroom a lot, but your body will get used to it. The next thing is that what's called the water cycle, and what we want to do is, when you drink water, you want to wait 30 minutes and then eat.
Okay.
And then after you eat, you wait 90 minutes and drink water again. And then guess what happens? It's lunchtime. So now you eat, and then you drink water again. But never have your water with your food. Because what happens when you have water or liquids with your food, we have stomach acid. And the stomach acid to digest our food. But if we put water to acid, what happens? It dilutes the acid. And so if it dilutes the acid, the body now has to work way harder. The energy system has to work way harder to process your food. Right. That's why you feel groggy. That's why you're going to feel tired. So if we want to talk about not have a foggy mind, it kind of starts with water and the timing of the water and the food that you eat. Okay. Now, with regards to food, if you start the day with having carbohydrates in the morning, it's going to change how your focus is throughout the day. And then you're going to be craving carbohydrates and sugars the rest of the day. Right. So in the morning, I start with eggs, fat and protein. Okay. And if you don't eat eggs, dal is great. Put a little desi ghee in there. But it's to have that fat, which is good for your brain, and have the protein, good for you to function. At lunchtime, have some protein and have greens. And then at dinner, save your carbohydrates, your roti, your fulke, your rice, your potatoes. And so you have greens, rice, and protein at dinner. If you eat that way and follow the water cycle that way, practical approach, you're going to find a complete different outcome in your ability to focus, and also how you sleep at night, because that's the next thing. What's the quality of your sleep? So we say there's to feed your spirit and to feed your body. So to feed your spirit, you need prayer, sleep, meditation.
Prayer, sleep, and meditation, right?
Prayer, sleep, and meditation. That's why if you look at monks and yogis and people who are priests, they don't need as much sleep because they spent most of their day recouping their energy in prayer and meditation. So ask yourself, if you were to monitor, how much time, or how's my sleep? Do I spend time in prayer, or do I spend time in meditation? Because here's the thing with meditation. Meditation and prayer have to go together. Prayer without meditation, meditation without prayer is not going to work. Because prayer is the signal up to the divine. Right. And meditation, the stillness, is waiting. So you have to first be still to send the signal up. And then you have to sit there still in meditation to wait for the answer. Right. So there's a communication with yourself and the divine, God, Waheguru, whatever you believe in. It's about you and your communication with your higher power. If you do not have a relationship with your higher power, you're not going to have energy and you're not going to be happy. Wow. Right? And that's how we build that relationship. The relationship can't be like, I'm in trouble, help me. That's like always with the hand out and says, hey, can you help me? Can you help me? That's what you look up, right?
Yeah,
Most of the time, can you help me?
That's like this, you have an emergency and you say, doctor, I need a doctor right now, but you've messed up your entire life. You haven't followed any healthy stuff. And all of a sudden you remember the doctor, right? So it's about working your ways backward from that. And I like the fact that what you mentioned, that meditation and prayer have to go hand in hand. It's like if you have in order to have a connection with the divine, you need to clean your tuning rod and the rod that connects you with the divine, with those vibrations every now and then. And that happens through meditation and stillness as well, as you rightly said.
100%. And then for the physical body, you need air, water, and food. So we covered air, that's the breathing, the water, we covered food. Look at your prayer, sleep, and meditation. And right there, you'll be able to instantly change your life. Because flow, we were talking about flow earlier, and to really understand flow, being fluid, so it requires stillness, requires awareness. But if I was to break down flow mechanically, because I'm an engineer, mechanic, so that we can live in. So for the first thing is that people look for triggers to trigger the flow state. The triggers they look for, like I was triggered, life and death, number one. So you look at, I don't know if people know of Laird Hamilton. He rides 100-foot waves, Navy SEALs, kick down doors, right? People who jump out of planes. Right. So those situations, the extreme situations, you can either get into flow or die. So that's one option.
Well, I can certainly, I remember the one when I jumped out of a plane. It was a tandem jump in Vegas, and it was all very exciting up until when the door opened and I could feel the weight, and I said, "Oh my God, look, it's actually very high," because I could see those cars looking like tiny flies on the road, and I'm a frequent flyer, and this is going against everything I know about flying. Doors don't open on a plane, you don't feel the air, you don't look down, you see none of that on a commercial airplane, and now we're going to jump out of it, right? So it was so against everything I knew, and that safety mechanism, I was going against it. But I think having done that, it was now even major turbulence on the plane, I'm pretty okay with that. I've seen, so relatively speaking, I've seen worse as far as air turbulence goes. So that absolutely makes sense what you just said about tuning into your inner self, correcting your diet and your water intake, sleep cycles. I see sleep cycles are really messed up these days thanks to gadgets that we take to bed with us, going to bed with your iPad or your iPhone, or notifications and other things that don't allow us, or lifestyles even that don't allow us to get a proper, decent, healthy, good night's sleep. I had a Buddhist guy from Sri Lanka when I was in the UK, who worked in the hotel that I was working, who worked in the kitchen there, and he would sleep, Sifu Harinder, on an average 3 to 4 hours a night. And I could not comprehend the idea at that point of time because I wasn't introduced to these practices. And I would ask him what he would do the rest of the time. And he told me, I'll just sit there in meditation and it's better quality sleep. So for him, sitting in meditation, chanting, or whatever he was doing was actually better quality of relaxation than real sleep. That was his take.
Yes, 100%. Yeah, it's understanding the mechanics, and then the next piece is, so that's flow or die. Then the next piece is remove yourself from the environment, so isolate to get to that state. And then the final one, which a lot of people are doing now that I highly do not recommend, is the usage of psychedelics. And so, but all three of these things are not sustainable, and they're external in. Right. So you need something outside. You're dependent, right? And to trigger, right? But the way instead is that we want to live a life in flow because flow is very natural. It's how we were designed, and we just have to, instead of trying to get into it, we have to just find what gets us out of it and look to intercept that. Okay. And those things come down to the 3 blocks of flow, which are security, control, and approval.
Okay.
They're the three biggest blocks to stillness, to flow, to adaptation, to awareness. They are. And security is fear, ego, pride coming from there, because that's when you operate out of security, because that's who's operating. The next control comes from anger, resentment. So you're worried about something that happened before. You don't want to happen again. So you want to control it. So the people listening, are you a control freak? Are you a security cat? Okay. Or are you an approval junkie? That means you need other people's approval to validate yourself. You need something outside of yourself to validate yourself.
Yeah.
And if we notice, if we're in the moment making a choice, and the choice is from fear, it's the wrong choice. If the choice is because you need to control something, it's the wrong choice. If the choice is because I need approval, so when you were saying that when I'm up speaking on stages or having amazing podcasts like this, I go through a process of killing myself before I come on, because I need to kill my attachment to be good. I need to kill my attachment for you to like me and for the audience to like what I'm saying. And I get to the point where I can't have that in the way. Because I know that's what would get me out of the way. Everybody's human and everybody experiences it. Anybody who says they don't is probably lying to you or a psychopath. But the thing with mastery is how fast can you catch it, understand it, and switch it and turn it on so it doesn't block me. And that's it. Because if you look about it, and the listeners listening, one of the biggest things I had to get over was log kya kahenge.
सबसे बड़ा रोग क्या कहेंगे लोग?
Right? Log kya kahenge.
And we're conditioned at a very young age to be very mindful of this, right?
We are. And what does it matter? The only thing that should matter is what do I think, and how well do I do, and am I giving my best? Because the attachments to victory and defeat, because society says we're a society based in winning. So if you're not winning, if you're not beating the neighbor, if you're not getting better grades, if you're not getting the better job, you're seeking winning, okay? Or you're afraid of losing. Winning and losing hasn't happened yet, so now you're operating in the future. Stillness is gone. And then you have attachment to people, places, and things. So if people and if in different places and different things, if they are coming into, they're going to take you out of the moment. And then finally, your need for security, control, and approval. So if we can understand whether it's an attachment to winning or losing, people, places, or things, or a need for security, control, and approval, those are the blocks that get us out of flow. So if you can catch yourself in those states, then guess what? When you're out of those, you're back in flow because you're always in. And that's the big difference.
No, that was very profound what you just said, that when you outlined those three things. And I think we've all at some stage or the other been through them or have been conditioned to hold those three things in very high degree of importance: control, approval, and third one you were saying was security, right? And to find a spot in order to not being so deeply attached to these things is going to be liberation, and that's natural state. When we look at infants, for example, they're in this natural state of bliss. There is no worry for the future, and there is no ego. They don't have anything to prove. They want to have fun. Their needs are satisfied. They know how to get their needs satisfied. In fact, if I might read a couple of lines of this WhatsApp message that was going viral the other day, which goes something like this: "Do you know what will happen after your funeral? In a few hours, the crying will completely stop. Family will be busy ordering food for relatives. Other worldly duties will take over. Children will be running and perhaps even playing. A relative will talk to your daughter over the phone while she's explaining why she cannot come from a different country because she cannot get the flights on time. On the following dinner, few relatives are left behind. Foreign relations will now plan sightseeing trips. The crowds will dissolve. In the following days, some calls may come to your phone without knowing that you're not there anymore. Your office will be rushing to find someone to replace you. A week later, after hearing the news of your death, some Facebook friends may search for your last post. In 2 weeks, your sons and daughters will return back to their work after their leaves get over. By the end of the month, your spouse will probably be watching a movie to change his or her frame of mind. In the coming months, your close relations will return to a very, very normal life. The rains have started, the elections are coming, actresses getting married, festivals around the world are happening. In the blink of an eye, years have passed and there is no one to talk about you. People are waiting to forget you. Who are you running for and who are you worried about? And I think that hit me like a ton of bricks the other day. People are waiting to forget you. This world will not take 5 minutes, 10 minutes, weeks perhaps, to get over what you spent a whole life building. And for most part of your lives, you spend what your relatives and neighbors think about. Are you living a life to satisfy them? No use. It's just a beautiful message I came across the other day. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing.
No, and it's a reminder that we often forget. And you know what? Mother Teresa perhaps answered this dilemma very, very beautifully. It's hung on her in the entrance of her children's home in Kolkata. It's hung, and I recited that poem also. It's called "Do It Anyway." To do the right thing anyway, without approval, without, right. And if you have to be in a positive mood, people are saying, oh, he's manipulative, etc., etc. You're going to get some of those labels, right? Or he puts this on, it's not genuinely happy. And she said, do it anyway. If you're honest, people will find a way to manipulate you, but be honest anyway, because that's the right thing to do. Because in the end, it's not between you and the world. That's such a superficial relation. It's about you and your connection with God, with the Almighty, whatever name you worship Him by, your relationship with that. So thank you so much. I think that really made this entire interaction today very, very worthwhile, was those 3 points that we need to move over: the security, the sense of control in all situations, and I beg your pardon, I forget the third one that you just mentioned.
Need for approval.
The need for approval, that we are so conditioned that social media has fueled it. All right, changing gears now. I know you are a follower of Bruce Lee's school of philosophy. And what's your favorite quote from the master, Bruce Lee himself?
Don't think, feel.
Don't think, feel. Okay.
Yeah, don't think, feel, because we are thinking a lot, we're analyzing a lot, but we have lost our ability to feel. We've lost our ability to use our perceptions to first kinesthetically feel, body feel, emotionally feel, that's empathetic, and then intuitive to feel what's right, and I think that feeling is a lost art. It's a lost skill, because mind is always on and tension is always there. So, and of course, be like water and flow, but we've been talking about that. But those two, they go hand in hand.
Wow.
I think that's both my favorite one.
I'll share the one that I follow, especially for on-stage appearances. He said something on the lines of, I fear not the man who has practiced 10,000 kicks. I'm not even sure if he said this. It's attributed to him. I fear not the man who has practiced 10,000 kicks once, but I fear the man who has practiced one kick 10,000 times. And that's usually my answer to my teams. Well, they say, oh, same story in this keynote as well. And I tell them, no, remember the Bruce Lee quote? I got to practice this story once, because it's a new audience. And it means a lot to them, and I love that. Great, it's been a wonderful conversation here today, Sifu Harinder Singh Sabharwal. We really value your time and the wisdom that you've shared so freely with us. I'm sure we'll have you back on this podcast, on the show very soon. But before we let you go for today, what are some words of inspiration and advice would you give to young people across the world, especially in the Indian subcontinent, where a lot, the bulk of our audience happens to be, but I think the issues remain, they are universal. What would you say to young people who feel discouraged, are still finding their direction in their life, or who feel lost without a sense of purpose?
Well, I think that the most important thing is to understand that fear is the mother of all emotions. Fear is behind everything. And the biggest fear that we all have that we don't want to talk about, there's fears of failing, there's fears of losing and rejection, fear of success, fear of being humiliated, expectations, there's those. But the biggest fear behind all that is the fear of dying. And the fear of dying, we don't want to talk. See, nobody wants to talk about it. That's because they're so afraid. But let me help liberate you from this for a second, how my teacher did for me. He said, if fear is the mother of all emotions and fear of dying is the greatest fear there is, Death is on our to-do list. It's inevitable. We're all going to die. So it makes zero sense to fear it. When we start to understand that, we start to really see, oh, wait a sec, what's happening here? So if you bring death, and now it's not morbid, listen to me as I go through this. Death teaches you, it's like yin and yang, to live and to value life. We say chardi kala, ever-rising spirit. But what is that ever-rising spirit? It's by understanding that we're all on a plane that's crashing. It's going down. We don't know the day. We don't know if it's when it's going to happen. So my teacher said, all right, here's a meditation for you to do. And he said, bring out your pencil. I said, okay. He said, do you do a to-do list? I said, yes, I do. The very first thing I want you to write on your to-do list is write, I am going to die. And then write everything else you're going to do the rest of the day. I'm sitting there, I'm here for Kung Fu. I'm like, what are we doing here, right? And so he says, you're grateful for your day? I'm like, yes, I do. You practice gratitude? He said, I do. He said, let's turn it up a gear. I said, okay. He said, when you go to sleep at night, this is the warrior's prayer. When you go to sleep at night, I want you to be grateful for the day you had. And when you wake up in the morning, I want you to be grateful for the day that's coming. And I said, yes, I do that all the time. He goes, but missing the key ingredient. I said, what's that, Sifu? And he said, listen, one day when you go to sleep, you're not going to wake up in the morning. Or one day when you wake up in the morning, you're not going to sleep at night. It's inevitable. That day is coming. So live every day with that in mind.
Wow.
So then all the little things that you're worried about, all the overwhelms, the exhaustion, the distractions, in the light of death, they don't mean anything. And it reminds you that when I wake up out of bed, my first breath, it's like the very first breath of when I was born. When you hear a baby, the first thing goes, and then it cries. And the last thing you do, what is it? It goes, it's that breath. That's the last two things you do. So if you bring that into your life, free yourself from yourself. Free yourself from your expectations. It's like living a life based on what other people think, based on fear. You can either have faith or you can have fear. You can either have love or you can have fear. If you have fear, you don't believe that God or the divine or something greater actually has your back. You don't know it. So that's what I would start with is, that's it. Start with fear, because fear is your way to liberation. Fear is my friend. Fear reminds me to focus. Fear reminds me to live. Fear reminds me to squeeze the most out of every day, every moment. And most importantly, it tells you not to give about what anybody else thinks. Do your thing. Do you, because you're here on this earth. Work on yourself so that you could be used in service, right? God is not going to use a dull sword, okay? So sharpen your sword and be ready so that you can be used. And if you're driven by that and not driven by your own personal needs, everything else will handle itself.
Definitely will. That's beautiful. A wealth of wisdom here. I had a lot of questions, but I think the depth, we were able to go very deep into some very important issues, and there's been a tremendous value addition here for the audience. I personally am going to implement the 5-day, 5 times, 5-minute stillness breaks, and maybe an awareness plan for these 3 forces that you mentioned: approval, security, to not overwhelm me and to not control the decision making of my life. It's been such a powerful experience for me personally, and I'm sure for everyone in our audience as well today. I invite you all to type in your top takeaways in the comments section, and of course we will share Sifu Harinder Singh Sabharwal's Facebook page, connection to his links to his books as well as courses, other online material and YouTube videos and all that. And please do connect with him for a wealth of information there, not just on physical fitness, but also the machine behind it, the mind behind it. It's been such a pleasure having you here today.
Oh, it's been my real pleasure and my honor. Thank you, sir. All
right, thank you very much. What an amazing conversation there today with Sifu Harinder Singh Sabharwal from California, United States. The sense of balance that he radiates, I can feel that it has emerged from years and years of practice, both internal and external, both training the mind and the body, because he teaches martial arts. I'm walking away with two very powerful takeaways. One is to not allow these three forces, approval, security, and control, to dominate your life. Your sense of seeking approval from other people, your desire to control situations, and your desire for security at all times. In seeking or allowing these forces to dominate your life, you miss out on so much. You miss out on being in the moment. You miss out on balance, and therefore we end up making decisions that we regret later on, decisions that cannot be undone later. That was and he mentioned this towards the end, and this was one of my biggest takeaways, as if I needed to hear this. And the second was very practical, very, very practical. The first level of stillness in stillness, was to physically sit down in a place and observe, be still, and just focus on your breathing. And for 5 days, take 5 minutes of stillness breaks 5 times a day. I'm going to do that 5-5-5 rule. I hope you all will also. And I think overall, as what he said about the consumption of the right amount of water and right amount of food, getting enough sleep, if we prioritize our well-being, we are going to make sensible decisions about what we eat and what we drink and how we sleep. The fact is, for many people, well-being is way low on the priority list. We need to change that, and I hope that this podcast here today will be the inspiration to help you do that, to prioritize your physical and mental well-being. Thank you for tuning in into another series of the Beginner's Mind Show, and I hope to see you again shortly. Take care, and bye-bye for now.